What is up, Pack a Day members? Welcome into our members-only Q&A. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at you already know all that stuff. Let's jump in right away. Thank you guys, as always, for being here, and thank you for being members. A couple quick announcements really quick before we jump in. Number one, next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time, if you are a Pack a Day All-Pro or Hall of Fame member, we are doing a special All-Pro and Hall of Fame Q&A. You can also come on camera. We can do up to 10 people on camera. So first 9 people that get in will be able to be on camera if you want as well. So great time to sign up to be an All-Pro or Hall of Fame member if you haven't already. But for those of you who are, again, next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time, a special pre-training camp Q&A. And then also Saturday, August, whatever the first preseason game is. Let me just double check it really quick here. It is Saturday, August 9th, 7 p.m. Central, New York Jets. Prior to that game, 4 p.m. Central Time, obviously we're within here in Green Bay, I'm going to be doing a live in-person Q&A, pre-game show, etc., from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Hagemeister Park, just like we did the live draft show. So 4 to 6 p.m. Hagemeister Park, before that first preseason game. I know a lot of you have been asking me, am I going to do a live meetup or meet and greet or Q&A during training camp or something like that? This is what I have planned for now. I might do a smaller something at some point as well, or just like a little bit less formal one. But for now, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on that Saturday, August 9th, if you are interested prior to the preseason game. I should still allow you plenty of time to get over to the game if you want to go or check out the game at Hagemeister Park as well. But again, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, August 9th. I hope to see you guys there. All right, with that said, let's jump into our questions right away. I guess one last thing, if you're listening to this and you're not a member, just remember I do make this available to all non-members as soon as we are done. But if you want to get in, ask questions, and get in live, just definitely make sure you're checking out those memberships as well. All right, we're going to start with Mirko, who I think starts with a really great question, something I hadn't really spent much time thinking of, if I'm being honest. Next year, LVN will be up for his 5th-year option in the offseason. Green Bay will have to make a determination on that. Mirko asks, what does LVN have to show this year for the Packers to consider picking up his 5th-year option during the next offseason? Well, I suppose the easiest way to kind of look at this in a real way is kind of by looking at Devonte Wyatt, right? Devonte Wyatt this past year only played in 366 snaps, which is a remarkably low number, only 22 plays per game. He had 32 pressures, 5 sacks. And while it's a little bit of a different position on internal defensive line rather than defensive end, they were picking up that 5th-year option. And now Wyatt did have 48 pressures in 2023. I think that's kind of where I come down to this on LVN. I need to see signs of growth. I need to see him still be a solid run defender. And I need to see him in the 40s in pressures. If you look at Van Ness over the last 2 years combined in his rookie and sophomore seasons, he has 42 pressures. So 22 in 2023, 20 this past year in 2024, 42 combined. I need him in the 40s this year. And I don't want to say it like at minimum, but assuming he's healthy and is playing 17 games and is, the starting defensive end, which is where he's, I think, kind of penciled in right now, it needs to be in that 40 range. So I need to see signs of progress. I need to see 40 plus pressures, good run defender, and probably a solid pressure percentage as well. I think that would get him in that conversation. I think if you're less than that, if you're in the 30s, or basically if we're seeing what we saw the last 2 years, 20 some pressures, 5-ish sacks, somewhere in that range, but mostly hustle effort sacks, that to me isn't going to be good enough. So I need to see a pretty significant increase in his productivity, in his pressures, his overall production. And if that's the case, then you consider it. If not, I think you go in a different direction and say, all right, we'll let you play out your 4th year, but you're going to have to prove it in your 4th year if you want a bigger contract after that. John says, I really enjoyed your conversation with Warren. He was really sharp. # dad jokes. Yeah, he was great to have on. Appreciate them reaching out to me to have Warren on the show. And he was a fantastic guest. Sometimes with those, by the way, if the person or like their team is reaching out to me to be on the show, I usually say yes. In fact, I don't remember a time. Maybe there was, I don't think actually there's a time in which I said no to anything, but you never quite know if they're going to be like, all right, like basically punching the time clock, right? Of like, all right, let's get this 30 minutes or so over with and be done with it. Or if they're going to have very specific, things that they want to cover. This was not that at all. Warren was fantastic. He showed up and was willing to talk about anything. Probably could have kept him longer, and I don't think he would have, complained at all. Like he was locked in, and it was a really cool conversation with him. So glad you enjoyed it, John. Trey Smith, 4 for 94 with 70 guaranteed, 17 more and 41 million more guaranteed than Banks. Very happy with Banks' guaranteed money in the deal. Yeah, the Packers have a very specific way of doing their contracts, and what they always want to give themselves is outs. Now, Trey Smith is a much better player than Aaron Banks, which is why you're paying him a little bit more of a premium in that situation. But sometimes Green Bay is going to grab free agents that they can get on their structure. That is going to allow them to bring in those players, but also be able to get off those players if at some point they want to no longer have them on the team. With Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks, in a couple years, they will, or even next year, the following year, the same thing they did with Jacobs and the same thing that they did with Xavier McKinney. They're willing to pay a little bit more up front, and they might even be willing to pay a little bit more for maybe a player like Banks or Hobbs, which aren't in that premium category, but they want to be able to say, hey, if you're not cutting it after a year or 2, 3, whatever it might be, we can cut you, and it's not going to be this terrible situation. So they have a different way of structuring it. It's not going to be for all free agents. It's going to limit them sometimes on who they can acquire, but we just saw them get Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. So I don't think it's a major issue, and it does give them that flexibility down the road. Now, the downside is kind of we've been talking about with Justice Mosqueda on a couple episodes recently is that's all good and well until the player, outperforms the contract, and then they look at their contract and it's like, oh, wow, Green Bay can release me at any time. We're seeing that with Elton Jenkins right now, with Elton having 2 years left on his deal, not anymore towards a Trey Smith type contract, right? We're seeing the guard market go up and up. Not only is the guard market going up, they're asking him to move to center, which is a less premium position in comparison. And he's getting older. Next year, Green Bay can get off that deal. And Green Bay probably looks at that Elton Jenkins deal right now and is like, hell yeah, this is a great deal for us. We get Elton this year at a reasonable cost. It's not a bad deal for Elton this year either. But next year, if we want to move on from him or trade him, we have the ability to do so without any dead cap. And it's Green Bay's in, a great place right now. Now, Elton got some benefits of that up front. And that's, again, the hard part of these contract structures and negotiations. But Trey Smith got paid, deservedly so. And yes, I think the Banks contract, we kind of knew what it was going to be. But either way, 4 years and 77 million is going to be a lot for Aaron Banks, but he's going to have to live up to it too if he wants to stay on that contract more than a year or two. So it'll be interesting. I think Banks is going to be fine. And I think we'll look back at that deal and be like, it was a reasonable deal for Aaron Banks. It does. I think it probably doesn't change things that much for Elton, just because I think probably the Packers and Elton's agency knew exactly that the Trey Smith contract was going to come in this number. I don't think there's anything shocking about this number. Maybe it's slightly more than either side maybe could have expected, but I think this is why there are these contract even Aaron Banks to a real extent is a difference there as well. So I don't think this is going to change it too much. I'm sure both sides were aware of what that could be, but it's certainly not going to make it any easier. I'll put it that way. In 2023, Packers beat the best teams and lost to some of the bad teams. In 2024, they lost to the best teams, but beat all the bad teams. Coincidence, or does that say something about the two squads? I think it's a little bit more. I think 2023 was a little bit more happenstance. And I think 2023 was a team that was figuring itself out. And I think it was a team that was very volatile, sometimes in a good way, sometimes not in such a good way. And I think it left you beating some good teams like KC and Detroit. It had you losing to some bad teams like New York. And it was just a team that you didn't quite know what you were going to get. I think the youth on that team sometimes didn't know what they didn't know, which served to be a good thing against some good teams. Like they just went in with the confidence of 1,000 suns, regardless, didn't matter. They were kind of playing with house money. And then on the flip side, it also maybe let them take the foot off their gas against some bad teams as well. And that's what you get sometimes with the young team. I think 2024, one of the themes that we talked about going into that season was the burden of expectation and the burden of you're not going to sneak up on anyone anymore. You just went to the playoffs, beat Dallas in Dallas, and took San Francisco to the wire. Good luck sneaking up on teams in 2024. And we saw that. And the good teams really took that to heart and said, yeah, we're going to take care of this team. We're not going to take them for granted. And Green Bay had a really tough time against the Minnesotas, the Detroits, and the Philadelphias of the world, went 0-6 in those games. Outside of the Chicago game, which was a fluky, stupid game with injuries and no stakes, right? Like outside of that game, Green Bay, every time they played a team that they should beat, they beat them. So it was an interesting season. I think that has a little bit more to do with, hey, we're a good team and we can beat we can beat the teams we're supposed to beat. But in order to be a great team, you have to beat the teams that are very difficult. And Green Bay could not do that this past year. That'll be a major challenge for them this upcoming year. So a little bit happenstance, but I think you can explain it away with where this team has been, with it being a very young team over the last 2 years. I heard the NFL on Fox team last night. My heart skipped a beat. Football season cannot get here soon enough. We're so close. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like how I would rank the football themes. You've got ESPN, CBS, NBC. Certainly, like I don't even know what the Amazon one is. I don't know what the Netflix one is or anything like that. But I think Fox, NBC, CBS are all great. ESPN is fine, but I think the CBS, NBC, and ESPN and Fox ones are all fantastic. Vegas line says Green Bay win total at 9.5. We have what appears to be a tough schedule, but 9-8 or 10-7. Are we as fans overhyping this team? Absolutely. Every team is overhyping their team at the moment. That's just what we do this time of year. I think this team is pretty accurately sort of thought of. What I will say here is a couple different things. Number one, they're at 9.5 for their total line. But if you look at how many games they're favored in, what is it, like 12 or 13 games this year, if not more? Like they're favored in a ton of their games this upcoming season. So they've got a really good squad. I think people understand the talent that's on this team. I think if you look at a 17-game schedule, I mean, even the best teams, right, are not much above, it's probably what, like 11.5 or something like that. I think they're probably, appropriately ranked in the fact that there is still some youth and mystery to this team and exactly who they can be. What can Jordan Love be? You're going to get some injuries. Just what kind of injury luck do you get? Is it good injury luck? Is it bad injury luck? Like those things are going to play a factor. I think, of course, every fan base is overrating their team at the moment. But I think for the most part, the league, Vegas, the Packers fans have a pretty good grasp of this team, that they're in the middle of the pack. Could easily go, 8-9, 9-8, could easily go 11-5 or 11-6, 12-5, somewhere in that range. And it wouldn't be super shocking. I think the 9-5 is splitting the difference a little bit. And again, it's just going to be, do some of their players take a step? What type of injury luck did they get in the opposite side when they play some of these teams? Meaning what players are hurt when they play those teams? Are the teams that look really tough on paper right now either tougher or not as tough? I think there's just a lot of that goes into that special sauce. So I think 9.5 is a very fair range. I think if you were to take the over, I would totally understand it. I think if you took the under, I would say you're maybe underestimating them a bit, but 9.5 seems right about right. And I think for the most part, Vegas, national fans or national media and local fans or all fans have a pretty good grasp of where Green Bay's at, a middle tier team that has the ability to be much better, but they have to show it. They have to prove it. If you were a lead personnel consultant for Green Bay 10 years ago and knew everything you know now, how many Super Bowls would have Green Bay won during that time? You better win okay. I'm 1,000,000% confident we'll have the best team over that 10 years. I mean, every single late round pick that's going to hit at a high level, every coach that's going to be good, everything. You can maneuver yourself in a million different ways. Even if you have the 32nd pick, you're going to be able to trade up. You're going to be able, all of it, right? So I'm a bazillion% confident, especially with the resources that Green Bay had and the talent that Green Bay had 10 years ago already. I'm completely confident that I'm going to put together the best team every single year. Now, the best team every single year doesn't necessarily win the Super Bowl. And there's this weird piece of I do think sometimes you actually need to have some kind of glue guys and middle tier players and things like that, just to kind of glue everything together. Like a team of stars is fun, but sometimes there's some issues that can happen with that as well. So my guess is I would win 6 or 7 of the 10 with having the best team. but just know there's going to come some complications with that. There's going to be some drama. Like, when you have a team that's stacked that big, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions on who you're trading, who you're releasing, you're still going to be in a good spot. But also, just in the Super Bowl, period, even if you get there, just trying to get there in a single elimination tournament, you can, slip up along the way. And every single team is going to give you their absolute best effort as well, which makes it that much tougher, especially again in a single elimination sort of series. So I think 6 or 7 is a fair number to be at, but I'd be 1,000,000% confident I could put together the best team every single year, knowing what we know. For better and worse, analytics have taken over sports. Every team uses them. Almost every team, at least every team uses them. Just to the level that they use them is still a variance. In my opinion, that has made football more watchable and basketball and baseball less watchable. Your thoughts? All right. I think this is a very interesting conversation. I think football has really proven itself that there is not a figured out cheat code as of yet to break the game. I'm not saying it can't happen eventually, but the fact that it has been pretty cheat code free, we'll kind of talk about some of those in the other sports in just a moment, I think is really impressive. It really shows that there is a purity to the game, that it is a team sport, that you can't just do the same thing over and over and get expected results. I do think we are seeing a little bit of something, meaning defenses really ultra focused on not allowing big plays down the field. I think we're having to see offenses just really kind of pick their way down the field and take some short yardage gains and things like that, and then really be great in red zone offense if they want to be a high profile team. But the best of the best teams are finding ways to get those explosive plays. But I do think that the purity of the NFL so far has really shown through, and that it's not that the tush push is about the closest thing to a cheat code that we've gotten, and some of these defenses that are really making sure they don't allow big plays. That's the closest we've got, and it hasn't changed the game in any real significant way, which I think is a real positive. So that to me is a very good thing. Baseball is interesting in the fact that we saw for a while just strikeouts and home runs, right? We don't care if you strike out. We just want you launch angle, hitting big time home runs. I thought for a bit that really made it a lot less watchable. I do think things are starting to equal out a little bit more. Teams that are hitting for average are showing that you can still win that way. And I will also add on top of that, I think the pitch clock has been a huge success. And right now I enjoy genuinely watching a baseball game for the most part. I'm not if it's Yankees or let's just say I don't know, two middle tier teams. If it's the Guardians and Red Sox playing, right? I don't care. I'm not interested enough in baseball to tune into that, but I can turn in a Brewers game right now, be entertained. Maybe that's because they're doing well, but I think for the most part, they've made some good changes. I do think analytics have taken over. But I think some of the stuff that they're doing and making it a little bit more viable for teams like Milwaukee to find ways to get really good pitching and things like that. I'm okay with it right now. I did think for a moment it was going to be broken, meaning we are just seeing big swings, home runs, strikeouts, and it's a really unaesthetically pleasing way to play baseball. But I think it's come back a little bit. I haven't looked at the statistics on it, but it feels better than where it was a couple of years ago. Basketball is gamed up, but I disagree with the assessment that it's unwatchable. I think you're seeing some of the best shooters we have ever seen because we are seeing the importance of the three-pointer. I think somebody like Steph Curry is, to me, the most entertaining player that I've ever watched. And I've watched Jordan, I've watched LeBron, I've watched every one of these players. I've been a pretty big basketball fan my entire life, Kobe, etc., Shaq. And to me, Steph is the most entertaining player that I've ever seen. And I think some of the three-point shooting and just the spectacular displays of that is really fun to watch. If you don't think defense is alive and well, listen, the 82-game season is too long. It doesn't matter for the most part. But man, go back and watch the NBA playoffs. There was some 80s Knicks, Pacers, type stuff going on out there. And I thought it was very physical. The defense was legit. And you do see teams contest 3-pointers more, contest the paint more. And the teams that can shoot in the middle range are sometimes at a little bit more of an advantage. We saw that with the Bucks, with Chris Middleton being able to live in the mid range when they won a championship. And then, of course, Giannis getting inside, and some of the stuff they were able to do from outside was important as well. But I think that there are different ways to put together a team in the NBA right now. And I legitimately think it's a fun era of basketball. So I do think it's changed the game with the 3-point shooting, and it basically like you want dunks or threes, but I don't think it's changed my appetite and desire to watch basketball at all. But I do, going back to your ultimate point, John, think that the NFL has been the sport that has maintained its integrity the most. And even with this huge influx of analytics, you still pretty much see a very similar brand of football that we've seen. And it still kind of ebbs and flows from run to pass to defense to offense. And all of it still matters, which I think is a good thing. All right. I've got by the way, the one I will say, the one I struggle with is really one of the sports that I love the most, which is soccer, or, football. The amount of just defensive heavy teams that are so dead set on just not allowing goal scoring, you do get into some of these really like teams just playing 11 behind the ball, right? Just lines and lines of defense, and then maybe a counterattack here and there makes it for sometimes a slog of one team having 85, 90% possession of the ball, but not being able to break down an 11-man defense, basically. I think some of those are a little bit tougher. What you really hope for in some of those games is an early goal, so the game opens up a lot more, but it doesn't always happen that way. So that's one that I think is a little bit more, I want to see a little bit more both teams trying to actually win the game rather than just one team playing 95% defense. But I do get that there is a very tough aspect to that when you are clearly the worst team and you just have to hold on for dear life trying to get 1 point in a tie in those scenarios. All right, I've got a 5, almost 6-year-old son and a 1.5-year-old son. Should I take them both to family night? Will they enjoy it? Thanks, Andy. This is less a Packers question and more a parenting question. This probably depends on the kids, right? Are they crazy, energetic, wild? Are they like ones that are just going to sit there and enjoy it? I think that probably has a lot more to do with that. I think you're more than welcome. I think you'll see kids of all ages, from babies to, teenagers at the game. So I think it's workable. I think personally, if it were me, I would probably try to find a babysitter for the 1.5-year-old and just have the 5 and 6-year-old maybe get to enjoy it a little bit more. But I know babysitters are expensive, or maybe everyone doesn't have access. Long story short, I think this is more of a you question and answer, and it more depends on what kind of, again, kids you're looking at here and how their wildness and craziness, and if the 1.5-year-old is going to be able to kind of sit through that a little bit longer. So that's my parenting advice more than Packers advice. Glad you visited Spain. Regards from the Packers Spanish community over here. I loved it, Christopher. Madrid's one of the, I think, coolest cities that I've been to. Tenerife was great. So highly, highly recommend. With Musgrave being a relative unknown, are the Packers in a similar situation at tight end as they are at corner? One injury away from a lot of uncertainty. I don't think so, in the same aspect of like there is at least, I think, upside with Tucker Kraft, where you have a potential Pro Bowl caliber player at the front of the line, where I don't think you have that at corner. You have maybe good to solid corners, but you don't have a player who could be a Pro Bowl or All Pro player, in my opinion, like you do at tight end. I think that's a big difference. I think the other thing is you have usually 3 corners on the field at all times, where you usually have 1, maybe 2 tight ends on the field at a time. Every once in a while, you might have 3, but for the most part, it's a lot of 1 tight end formations, right? And you even could get away with not playing any if you really wanted to. So I think that changes it up. You couldn't get away with no or 1 corner, right? You're going to need 2 at minimum, and almost always 3 out on the field. So that's a change in it. I will also say, I still think, you have a 2nd-round player in Luke Musgrave, and somebody that has a bunch of talent that you are still very hopeful of could become something maybe not special, but really, really good. Again, you have a 7th-round pick, and then, an undrafted free agent in Keyshawn Nixon. I think Hobbs was a day 3 selection, if I remember correctly. So you don't have, again, that high-profile player. Even if he hasn't recognized it yet, there's at least that talent in there somewhere. So there's a little bit more hope in that. So I don't think it's completely apples to apples. I understand your overall, sort of point where if Kraft gets hurt, you're in a bit of no man's land. But I even still in that situation think that Musgrave can step up and be what they need him to be for the most part at that position. Not Kraft, but I still think he can be a good player. I feel like I haven't heard much about Cameron Young. Thoughts on what his contribution to the team will be this year? I don't think any, which is probably why you've not heard much about him. This is a flyer free agent pickup. I get he's a former 4th-round pick. I get he has NFL experience. To me, I think he's going to have to just battle his way with the Nesta Jade Silveras and the James Esters and the Nazir Stackhouses and, missing one, Franklin, right? Is that his name? It's not Franklin. It is, can I think of it? Randolph. That's what I was thinking. Keith Randolph. He's going to have to battle those players just to probably have a shot at the practice squad first. If there's an injury or two, then I think him and Stackhouse are maybe fighting a little bit more for maybe that last roster spot. I thought James Esther has looked pretty solid as well. So I don't think you're expecting anything out of Cameron Young this upcoming season. And if you actually get something, to me, that would be a little bit more of a bonus right now. All right, not a question, but I'm so glad you mentioned the need for more play action this year. It was so obvious that it wasn't possible last year and somewhat of a limitation. Needs to be a much bigger piece of the foundation of this team and something that I think just opens up some of the explosive plays a little bit more as well. All fans overhype their teams. I'm a realist, so it doesn't impact me unless the team shows early they can win the Super Bowl. I won't expect it. Totally fair, Mike. Personnel group I'm most excited to see: Watson, Reed, Golden, Kraft, and Lloyd. All right. I wonder what the over-under is on how many snaps we get with those exact 5 on the field this year. Let's see. Watson, let's say he plays just in like 8, let's say 8 games. All right. So 8 games, let's say he plays 25 snaps per game. So that in and of itself is 200 snaps. Let's say 200 snaps from Watson. If he gets more than that, great. So of those 200 snaps, I could easily see a world in which Lloyd is around like 300 snaps. So how many of those 200 of Watsons and 300s of Lloyd's overlap? Let's say 40. I don't even think that might be out. Let's say 30 snaps this year where Watson and Lloyd are on the field at the same time. What are the odds that in those 30 snaps that Lloyd and Watson are on the field at the same time, that Reed, Golden, and Kraft are also all out there at the same time? Kraft is pretty good. He should be out there the vast majority of the time. And that's, again, not even including injuries as part of this equation. I think if you were to say right now, just does this lineup happen at any point this year or does it not? I think I would say it probably happens maybe once. I actually might go the opposite direction. I think there's a better chance we never see this lineup, this exact 5 this year, than that we see it at any point in time. I mean, if at any point Reed, Golden, Kraft, or Lloyd through the first 8 games of the season end up with an injury that they can't play in the second half of the year, it's done in and of itself, right? Because Watson's probably not playing the first half of the year. So I think if you had to ask me right now, John, if at any point this year we see those exact 5 players on the field at the same time, I would say I'll take the under. I'll say we won't see it. But if we do, I think it could be a very fun lineup. DS Badger says they win at least 10 games. I think that, then first of all, go bet the over. Well, I'm not encouraging anything of that regard, but you can bet the over if you want to. But I think I would probably go in that direction as well. Do I expect a trade out before the season starts? Dobbs, Jenkins, and Igbari. What percentage probability do you think it happens for one of the players on the roster? Christopher, spoiler alert. And you are a member, so you can go check out this episode now if you want. I do have a bold preseason training camp prediction of a trade before the start of the season. And one of those players that you name is on that list. I love you, Andy, but Steph isn't in the same stratosphere as Jordan. Whoa. Let me back up, Chad. I didn't say Steph was the best player. All right. Let me clarify that very clearly. The only 2 that you can have the conversation on for best are Jordan and LeBron. And I can talk about that in a moment. Steph was the most entertaining player for me that I enjoyed watching. So that's just a person. I'm not even, evangelizing and saying everyone else should have Steph as their most entertaining player. Everyone's going to have their own cup of coffee for who they think is the most entertaining, right? Could be Shaq, could be a Giannis, could be Jokic, could be Jordan, could be LeBron, could be Kobe, could be a Reggie Miller, could be like, there's a variety of different players that you might find as your specific most entertaining player, which is why we get jerseys and cheer on those players, etc. For me personally, Steph is the most entertaining player that I personally have ever watched. All right, so that set that to the side. As far as best player, there's two. It is LeBron and it is Michael. And this to me is a very easy conversation, okay? If you said, which player is, you took Jordan, prime Michael Jordan, you just went back to 1990, whatever, and picked Michael Jordan out of the space-time continuum, and you took prime LeBron James out of the space-time continuum and had them play each other right now in front of the world, to whatever you want, LeBron's winning that easily. All right. I love Michael, and we'll get to this in just a moment. Michael's not stopping LeBron. Like, LeBron was a freight train. I don't care how good of a defender Michael was, which he was phenomenal. LeBron was a freight train, and LeBron has the length, the size, the speed, all of it. Michael's not stopping that one-on-one. So just taking them both out of their eras, it is LeBron. If you're looking at career, who had the better career, it is very clearly LeBron. LeBron was better earlier. LeBron is better later. He was second team All-NBA last year at age 40. Jordan was, the Wizards years were like nowhere near what LeBron is doing at this point. So the better, now you can argue the 6 championships. That's a fine argument. And if you want to make that, sure, go for it. But if you want to say who's had statistically the better career, to me, LeBron all day, every day. Here's where it gets complicated. To me, the better player is the player that was more dominant over everyone else in their own particular era. So to me, Jordan, because you can't compare eras like this, right? Like, LeBron has so much more sports science and all these other things at his disposal that Jordan did not have in his era. Somebody 10, 15 years from now will have more than what LeBron had, and so on and so forth. So I don't think you can apples to apples compare them. To me, Jordan was a far more dominant player over his peers in his prime than LeBron was over his peers in his prime. So vis-a-vis, if you had to ask me who was the best all-time NBA player, to me, Jordan being the far more dominant player in his era and winning the 6 championships, I would lean towards Michael Jordan overall. But if you just wanted to say who has the better career, it is LeBron. If you just want to say who wins one-on-one, it is LeBron. So that is my ultimate argument. You can't just say who's better, LeBron or Michael. There is nuance to that argument. And it just depends on what lens you want to look at it through. There are multiple ways that you could argue LeBron. There are multiple ways that I think you can argue Michael. But to me, Jordan is the best player in NBA history based upon the time he was actually playing in comparison to his peers. And that's why I lean towards Michael. It is close, and I certainly will have no umbrage with you if you decide that you want to put LeBron James. If you want to argue anyone besides the Michael Jordan era, the Kareems, the Bill Russells, I don't even care who else, go for it. I don't care. I don't have the, Wilt Chamberlain. Sure, they absolutely could be. I don't know. That's before my time. I really don't care about stuff that happened before I was alive because I didn't get to view it, and I'm not going back and watching Wilt Chamberlain tape. All right. So to me, in modern NBA is what I care about. Michael versus LeBron. And I will take Michael ever so slightly. But again, it depends on the lens that you look at it through. All right. Do you think Covington can make that big of a difference with our D-line and rushers? Fingers crossed. The answer is yes. The ultimate answer, Chad, is I have no freaking clue, nor do you, nor do the Packers. And it just is going to be the hope and pray that the answer is yes. And we will find out soon enough. Trey Smith for the Chiefs just signed 4 years, 92. I wonder if that will affect Jenkins' deal. We did talk about that at the beginning of today's show a little bit. Surtain was the highest paid corner last year at $24 million. Now 2 guys are $30 million and he's 5th. These salaries are bananas. Enjoy your vacay, Andy. Go Pack Go. It's why you are usually better off getting deals done sooner rather than later. It's why Zach Tom should already probably be under contract. And I think Green Bay has made a pretty sizable error, in not signing Zach Tom last year at some point. I think it's probably cost them in the range of at least $5 million per year, especially before that Dan Moore contract got done. It might cost them more than $5 million per year. Like not getting Zach Tom done in 2024 could potentially cost him like 40, 50 million. So I think that was maybe not that much, maybe I bet like 25 million though. So I think that was a pretty sizable error, and one that the longer it goes on, the more Zach Tom's contract probably goes up. I'm a LeBron guy and a Chicagoan, and Chad learned today, combine that with me being a Packers fan, and I'm the most hated Chicagoan. Love that. What is your preseason prediction for El Guerzma touchdowns, yards, interceptions, etc.? This is a really tough one because I don't know how much they're going to play him. I'm going to say, let's see, 3 games, maybe a little less than 3. I bet like 2 quarters, 2.5 quarters, maybe. I'll say 8 of 18 for 200 and no, that's a lot of yards. For 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I think there'll be some high variance stuff. Maybe not the most accurate, probably take some sacks, but a couple throws that make you go, oh my God. So that's my random Taylor El Guerzma stat line. Warren Sharp placed a lot of blame on Matt LaFleur for 4th down to go, no decisions, and play calling. Why do you think Matt LaFleur was so bad there? What do you want to see from him in 2025? I do talk about this a little bit on a couple episodes I got coming up for this week. I think there was a variety of different things at play. I think, first of all, when he was aggressive in years prior, they weren't ultra successful at it. I think overall you want to be following the analytics, but Matt LaFleur being more aggressive in 2025 in and of itself doesn't solve anything. He needs to be more aggressive, and they need to be successful in those aggressive situations. In some of the 2022, 2023, and even before that years, they would be aggressive, and it didn't always work out the best. So I think a part of it is that, and that kind of goes with some of the play calling as well as doing more QB sneaks and being more successful and having plays that are better odds of you being successful in those situations. So I think those two go hand in hand, but it's not just being aggressive. You have to be successful being aggressive as well. I think some of the deficiencies of the offensive line in short yardage situations also played a part in that decision making. That's another thing. Like, analytics will tell you what you should do in these situations, but it doesn't tell you, like, let's just put it this way. If Green Bay's starting offensive line was Jason Spriggs, Byron Bell, Lucas Patrick, Alex Light, and Kyle Murphy, all right, like the worst offensive line that you could possibly imagine. We'll even add Don Barclay in there somewhere. Just a god-awful offensive line, okay? And you're going up against the 85 Bears defensive line. When you get that analytic coming down from above on a 4th and inches from the opposing team's, 45-yard line, or 4th and 1 from the opposing team's 45-yard line, or your own 40-yard line that says go for it, that's great. You have the worst offensive line in the history of football going against the best defensive line in the history of football. As a coach, you have to say, yeah, the analytics says go for it, but I'm going to punt. I don't think this is a good one in our favor. So, some of those things play a factor. And I think some of the deficiencies in short yardage situations maybe affected some of that for Matt. I think the other thing is Jordan's injury clearly played a part. And last but not least, for the first time, he had a defense. He had a defense that he felt, it probably his first time as a career as a head coach, that if they were on their own 40 and it was 4th and 1 and they punted it away, they were going to get the ball back in good field position again because the defense could actually stop people. So I think all those things played a part. I will tell you that for the most part, none of those are good enough excuses. You have to be aggressive and you have to be willing to go for it. In fact, I would argue that a good defense makes it so that if you fail on some of those 4th downs, you're hoping that the defense can hold and get you the ball back, or maybe hold at least to a field goal, so it's not a catastrophic situation. So I do think you still need to be more aggressive, but I think those are some of the reasons that played into Matt LaFleur's decision-making. But again, I'll say I don't think those are good enough reasons overall. I respect your opinion. We're going to have to agree to disagree on the Jordan LeBron. LeBron can't carry Jordan shoes, in my opinion. I think that is a wild take. I think at the absolute worst case is you have to understand that there's at least an argument here. Like, there's at least an argument of like, who is the better player? And again, I'm team Jordan overall. If you said who's the best player in NBA history, and I can just name one, regardless of nuance or anything else, my answer is Jordan. But I think it's absurd. Absurd might be aggressive, but I think it's crazy to say that there's not at least a conversation, or that LeBron can't even, carry Jordan's shoes, etc. There's at minimum a conversation. But if you want to go with Jordan, I'm not going to, again, debate you. Again, I'm on Team Jordan overall. And I respect your opinion if I'm a subscriber, but in the ranking the Packers players, this is all fun, by the way, you had Oladapo and Musgrave over Emmanuel Wilson. Man, I wonder where, give me 1 second here. I'm curious. First of all, I very much stand by Musgrave over Wilson. I don't even know that Wilson makes the team this year. So I definitely feel much more confident that Oladapo and Musgrave are locks than what Emmanuel Wilson would be. All right. So I'm just curious what Huber had. So Musgrave, I had at 31. Huber had at 29. So Musgrave, Huber actually had 2 spots above me. Oladapo, I had at 35. Huber had at 54. So he had at 19 spots below me. Emmanuel Wilson, I had at 37. Huber had at 41. So Huber even had Wilson 4 spots below where I did. So he would have ranked it Oladapo, Wilson, and then Musgrave, with Musgrave coming in 12 spots ahead of Emmanuel Wilson. So Oladapo, I'm probably being a little bit over aggressive on. I will readily admit that. I'm still pretty high on Luke Musgrave overall. And I'm actually a Emmanuel Wilson believer. I think he's a really good running back, but I think he's going to have a fight for even just making this team. And I think him and Chris Brooks are going to have at it. And I think that's why I probably had Emmanuel Wilson a little bit lower on the list, but I very much like Emmanuel Wilson. The 2021 D was better than last year's. No. I think that's a really fun conversation. I'd have to look at the rankings, the analytics, the DVOAs, and just kind of go back and watch the tape a little bit. I think 2021 was more talented. I think 2025 got better results. But I think 2025 was skewed by some bad opponents in there as well. And some very bad offenses that they kind of took advantage of. So I think you're probably right that 2021's might be a little bit better. But that's a fun conversation. I'd have to look at that closer, Gary. Holmes says no. Last year's defense was between top 5 and 8, depending on metrics used. Yeah, again, I think last year's was better ranked, and it's an interesting one. Again, I think they had a little bit more of a benefit of playing some bad offenses. But again, I'd have to go back and look at 2021 and see where theirs came in as well. It's a fun conversation. Again, I do think 2021 had better players overall. All right. Anyone got anything else? Otherwise, I am going to get out of here. But I'll give you guys a couple seconds to see if there's anything else you wanted to go over. Appreciate the great questions today, as always. You guys kill it every single time. All right, let's see. They also played well defensively against some very good units. Again, I want to go back and look at that a little bit more. We didn't drop as many 3rd and 4th down balls in 2021. Fair enough. LeBron can't carry Jordan's shoes is definitely a bit strong. This is the childhood superhero thing. What about Coop, Andy? What about Coop? Claire, I need a little bit more clarification on that question, Holmes. What was meaning where? Yeah, I need a little bit more clarification there. Don't go by ranking, go by your eyes. Yeah, again, some of those of like once 2021's done, I don't spend a ton of time thinking about the 2021 defense, to be honest. I would, again, I'd probably lean 2025 a little bit, but again, I'd have to go back and watch 2021. I appreciate you a ton, Chad. Thanks for being here. I mean, Cooper, I think he can be unbelievable. I was stunned he didn't get a single vote in the top 10 linebacker rankings by ESPN, like not a single vote. That is absurd to me. I think he'll be easily in the top 10 on that list next year. I think he'll be a Pro Bowler, or at least in the conversation for being a Pro Bowler this year. And I think in the near future, not 2025, but I think in the near future, he'll be able to get his name in the conversation for the best linebacker in football. 2021, definitely took a step back from 2020. Agree with that. I did agree with McKinney being first. Best thing to happen in the Packers for a while. Thanks for that, R. Smith. I do think there's, again, a good conversation there, but I like McKinney as the best player on this team. I think KO might play some weak side linebacker on 3rd down. I'll believe that a little bit more when I see it, but I do think he could play some linebacker in a pinch if they needed to this year. I think they probably would need Quay or Cooper to go down and want him in that nickel linebacker role in order for him to get on the field, but you never know. Could see him in some weird packages. Yes, it was absolutely crazy that Cooper was not on that list. Same thing with Zach Tom, only getting, just votes and not even being honorable mention. Just absurd stuff. All right, friends. Appreciate all the questions today. I will not have happy hour this Friday. I will be out of town Thursday through Sunday this week. I will be back next week, and we are going to ramp up in a significant way with Q&As, live shows, a whole bunch of different stuff with training camp starting next week. So keep an eye out for that. Looking forward to it. We ramp up in a ridiculous way starting next week. Going to try to get a little bit more R&R before the end of this week is over. So again, no happy hour this week, but I will see you guys all very, very soon. All of your episodes for the week are up if you are members already, so you can go check those out. Great conversations with, Justice for today's show, Perry and Grant for tomorrow. And then some really fun conversations about the state of this team as well the rest of the week. See you guys all very, very soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.